ways to help women-owned small businesses succeed. There are more than 12 million women small business owners contributing $2.1 trillion in total sales to our national economy. While women entrepreneurs are creating jobs and igniting local economies, according to the National Federation of Independent Business, the Small Business Optimism Index remains below the 49-year average for the 18th consecutive month. Inflation and rising interest rates are top concerns.
Total said they would cut the extra $300 a week in federal assistance before it officially ended. And that's as some employers and Republican lawmakers said additional money was discouraging people from returning to work. Andrew Stetner, a senior fellow at the Synergy Foundation, said the hypothesis that Republican governors were predicting has been disproved. Multiple sources reviewed data from 24 states. So have you or anybody that you know been receiving unemployment benefits? And do you believe that the unemployment benefit boost from President Biden helped families out in America? Tell me what you think in the comments below, everybody. So while those states did see a bigger decline by one metric, ultimately their unemployment rate dipped by nearly the same rate as those that continued the extra benefits throughout the summer. And that's because while states that ended the $300 check before September saw their employment rate rise faster than their peers in June, those rates then fell in late July and August. The rise of the crisis likely complicated the data in states that stopped the supplemental aid. Economists have disagreed about whether the federal boost to unemployment assistance stifled job searches, though most say that most people would rather work than rely on benefits. Senator Kirsten Sinema slammed the decision to delay the vote this week on the bipartisan infrastructure deal. Sinema said in a statement that over the course of this year, Democratic leaders have made conflicting promises that cannot be kept. So, canceling the infrastructure vote erodes that trust in Americans. What are your thoughts on this, everybody? Why do you think that Nancy Pelosi is holding back her stimulus check and not voting on the infrastructure bill? Do you believe that she is doing all that it takes to help us out? Tell me in the comments below, everybody. In August, the $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill passed through the Senate in a 69-30 vote. The bill sought to provide further funding for traditional infrastructure like repairing bridges and roads. The bill was negotiated by President Biden as well as Senate moderates from both sides of the aisle. The bipartisan bill was slated for a vote in the lower chamber this week. However, those chances were foiled when progressives signaled that they would tank the bill if a larger reconciliation bill with Democratic priorities was not passed. The vote was first anticipated to come up Monday. Over time, it got dragged out until Friday when President Biden broke the news to moderate Democrats on Capitol Hill. But the good news is this: many of you can expect to receive a stimulus check this year. The House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has just set a new deadline for the House to pass a major infrastructure spending bill after a week of negotiations with President Biden and multiple members in Congress. Progressive Democrats in the House refused to vote on the bipartisan infrastructure bill, though. That's despite the measure and pressure from moderate counterparts that has leverage in negotiations over a separate bill that contains massive spending on many of Biden's campaign promises. Biden and progressive Americans to do so for the first time. Filing taxes can be a daunting task, folks, and collecting all the paperwork and checking all the boxes. So many Americans turn to tax preparers. However, a bipartisan pair of U.S. representatives introduced legislation that will give the IRS the ability to hold taxpayers accountable for misinformation. The Taxpayer Protection and Preparer Proficiency Act would establish competency standards that will reduce the risk for families from shoddy taxpayers. Everybody, after approving President Biden's $3.5 trillion budget plans, Democrats are now set to draft a spending package. It is likely to be funded by tax hikes on the wealthiest Americans, investors, and large companies. President Biden has proposed a 28% corporate tax rate, higher than the current level at 21%. And that's enough money for the government to finance 2 more $1,400 stimulus checks, similar to the ones that most Americans received in the $1.9 trillion Biden stimulus law during the crisis. Americans have already received 3 stimulus checks since the start of the crisis, folks. In the latest round, containing checks worth up to $1,400, was sent out in March. A recent Change.org petition has over 2.8 million signatures, urging a 4th stimulus check of $2,000 for adults and $1,000 for dependents, paid out monthly for the duration of the crisis. In addition, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki is saying this. She said that it is up to lawmakers in Congress to decide whether another round of checks would be introduced. Bernie Sanders was noting the difference between the two parties since congressional Republicans in previous years have approved tax cuts for the wealthy Americans. Guys, Bernie Sanders is making his case based on a budget proposal, which promises universal pre-kindergarten and tuition-free community college. It also expands healthcare coverage through Medicare and creates pathways to citizenship for millions of Americans. But Republicans said the plan is loaded with unnecessary spending and tax increases. Ron Wyden, Mark Warner, and Sherrod Brown have already released a draft framework. The program is specifically for people in the state of Virginia. The new relief program is going to be sent out based on basic income to hundreds of local families. Now, the mayor of a city in Virginia told reporters, Guaranteed Income Program is a proven tool to help families become stronger and financially stronger footing and take steps to move up the economic ladder. From the total applications, everybody, the program will randomly select residents. The selected people will get $500 a month for 2 years, and authorities expect to first see the guaranteed income stimulus checks from Virginia in 2023. This program is going to cost $3 million, not a lot of money, and the funding for the program just comes from the CARES Act and the Rescue Plan Act. To be eligible for the guaranteed stimulus check, you must be at least 18 years older, and also applicants' annual income should be less than 50% of the area median income. Not only this, but other states and cities are doing the same thing. They're experimenting with this. They're experimenting with similar guaranteed income programs. Richmond, Virginia, for instance, came up with a similar program with just 18 families. New York also did the same thing. For the last 6 months, President Biden has just been talking with his advisors about discussing the gas prices and what needs to happen on this. That's because now single prices rattle consumers as much as the cost of gas, which crept up again to a new high of $5 a gallon in June. As it comes no surprise that soaring gas prices corresponded directly with President Biden's sinking approval rating. Since then, gas prices have fallen by about $1.10. Biden may have helped a little by releasing oil from the strategic reserve, but according to Yahoo News, Biden has largely ignored another important type of fuel. Diesel fuel, which is critical for the production and transportation of many everyday products, is here. Around the same time, gas hit $5 a gallon. Diesel hit $5.81 a gallon. Now gas prices are now 22% below their peak, but diesel is just 8% lower. On a year-over-year basis, gas prices are up 15%, while diesel is up 43%. High diesel prices are a kind of hidden inflation because most consumers never buy stations, but it's possible because efforts to create commissions to examine the programs may move forward as part of a deal, which has set off a vigorous debate. And that would include Social Security pension disability, Medicare Part A, highway trust funds, and things like that. Social Security's trust funds are projected to pay full benefits until 2035, at which point just 80% of the monthly checks will be payable, because Medicare's Part A trust fund will cover hospital care.